Hello, friends, and welcome to this very interesting seminar on effective collaborations. The story of Sight First has been written by the lions in all parts of the world by virtue of their efforts and their contributions. That's what's made this program so successful in combating blindness. But essentially, along with the work of the lions, it's been the partnerships with various organizations in different parts of the world that has leveraged the results of the efforts of the lions. Different organizations bringing together their core competencies, their own strengths, so that Lions Clubs International Foundation, with the support of the clubs in all constitutional areas of the world, have been able to focus and work together to be able to really make an impact in bringing down those figures of blindness. And one person who really saw all this happen for the last many years, ever since that individual was on the board as an international director and visited for the first time in India when we had past President Rohit Mehta as the president of the association. And then he saw the program develop. He saw the program go worldwide. And he was instrumental in forging and in nurturing one of the very interesting and successful partnerships with the Carter Center. We have with us today past international president Jim Irwin, our board appointee this year on the board, and we would like to hear from our leader, past President Jim Irwin.
Fellow Lions, I am past international president Jim Irwin, and I'm very honored to have the opportunity to be a part of your Sight First conclave, and I congratulate you for sharing this information with your Lions throughout your multiple districts. I want to thank past International Director A.P. Singh and Sangeeta Jatia for this information that they sent to me and for the opportunity to share some of the history of the Sight First program, a program that I believe is one of the greatest accomplishments that Lions Clubs International has had in our 100 plus years of service serving humanity. As you know, the World Health Organization came to Lions and shared with us that more than 40 million people around the world were blind, and 80% was preventable or reversible. And at a board meeting in Singapore in 1988, the Lions Board of Directors voted to begin what we know now as the Sight First program. Of course, that was followed up by Campaign Sight First 1 and 2, and now Campaign 100 to continue our work in eliminating the backlog of preventable and reversible blindness. Blinding cataract surgeries, trachoma, and onchocerciasis, or as we know, river blindness, were the three main blinding preventable blindness. So as we began to listen to the World Health Organization and bring our healthcare experts into being, then we developed the Sight First program. My first experience with it was in 1992 as an international director when past President Rohit Mehta had his board meeting in Bombay, which is now, of course, Mumbai. And we went to a camp where we saw surgeries being done and then realized the magnitude of the people throughout your great country that needed surgeries for cataracts. And that, of course, was one of the great stories and success that was happening throughout your country. And, of course, we know that as we continued to develop the programs, in 1996, of course, I had the pleasure of being elected as your international third vice president. And at that convention in Montreal, the Lions of Georgia had put up fellow Lion and President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, for the Humanitarian Award. And he was selected by President Wonder and the trustees. And, of course, he attended and shared with the Lions of the world what he and his people were doing at the Carter Center in trying to make life better in many ways and building hope and peace and better lives for people around the world. At that time, I was asked to be the liaison and to work closer with the Carter Center and see if we could put together some programs that would benefit Lions Clubs International as well as people who were having blinding diseases. We began working in small programs to start with. And of course, in 1999, when I became the international president, we had a board meeting in Atlanta, and it was at that time that we furnished a grant to the Carter Center in excess of about 16 million US dollars to help us begin our work in eliminating blinding trachoma as well as blinding river blindness. So as we began to work and develop those programs, we realized that the Carter Center was able to open doors for us that we couldn't do in the countries where we needed to serve. And it was through that we began to have success in our development of those programs to eliminate preventable and reversible blindness. A meeting was set up between Lions, myself, and President Carter and his staff with Pfizer, and we asked them to provide us with the Zithromax, which is an antibiotic that eliminates the disease. And they were gracious enough to say yes and to give us that Zithromax, where we as Lions and the Carter Center could begin work, particularly in areas of sub-Saharan Africa, where it was such a large numbers of people who were becoming blind from trachoma and as well as river blindness. Of course, we know that prior to Pfizer helping us with trachoma, that Merck and Company was providing the Mectizan, which is the same medication that you give a dog for heartworms, and they found out that this would help eliminate the blinding river blindness, or called onchocerciasis. So we were fortunate to have two of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies to join us and other NGOs in working to eliminate the backlog of preventable and reversible blindness. Of course, as we worked through the years and saw the success we were having, we had several milestones that came about. At the 5th anniversary and the 10th anniversary, we celebrated with Pfizer and Lions throughout sub-Saharan Africa the successes we were having. And under the leadership of President Scruggs, we went back to Ethiopia to celebrate the 500 millionth dose, the distribution of the Zithromax, which had saved the sight of literally millions of people throughout their country and throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And the thing I hope that all of us will realize as we talk about these successes is to know that today, that millions of young people, children, will now grow up to be productive people in their countries and know that they won't be going blind. And this is a tremendous humanitarian endeavor that wouldn't have taken place if it hadn't been for you Lions around the world that reached into their pockets and gave their funds and continue to do so. And yet we know that we have our campaign that's going on today. We need continued financial support, and I know that there have been many throughout your country that have come to the aid of helping us financially, and we're grateful to all of them. We're grateful for the leadership that you have provided to our international association and those who have stepped up and understand the importance of the Sight First program and what it's going to do when we can all one day say that we have eliminated the backlog of preventable and reversible blindness. So we can say to President Jimmy Carter and the Carter Center and their staff that we're grateful for the opportunity that he, as a fellow Lion, and for the recognition that he's given Lions on many occasions on television and through his books and through advertisings, sharing his important feeling about it was the Lions that gave him the idea to create the Carter Center and the humanitarian work that they're doing. So today, as you and all your fellow Lions support your Sight First Conclave and each year continue to celebrate our successes, I again want to thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for Lions. Thank you for what you're doing for your community and your country and helping those that are most in need. Thank you again for the leadership that you've provided to us. And we look forward to many more years of serving together as Lions and making the world a better place to live, to work, and to play. Thank you. Stay safe, and may God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Past President Jim, for your comments and for that historical snapshot about how this entire success story of Sight First began and how it's traveled in different parts of the world, and especially for sharing your experience of working with Carter Center. That's indeed been enriching. We are so grateful to you for your time and for sharing this knowledge with us. We will now move on to the next part of this seminar, which is a presentation by Eric Brella, who is the manager for the partnerships that we build with different organizations and works out of Oak Brook in the LCIF division. My dear friends, each partnership that is first conceived, then it's discussed, deliberated, finalized, then actually executed, assessed, evaluated, and then carried forward. There's a lot of work to do. And that's very important because when organizations come together, first they must understand and agree upon the commonality of the purpose, then about the logistics, the working methodologies, the reporting and the sharing of the information, the assessments and the evaluations of what's being really achieved and accomplished through the efforts of the two organizations, and then to develop the pathways for the future. And that needs a lot of study, that needs a lot of critical work to be done. And someone who will really be sharing with us about how these partnerships get built and how they get carried over a number of years so that they become the successful stories would be Eric Brella. And as he speaks to you now, feel free to put in any questions that you may have in the chat box. Eric is going to be with us through these presentations, and he would be answering your queries on a live basis. So let's go ahead and enjoy this seminar.
Greetings from Oak Brook, Illinois. My name is Eric Brella. I'm the manager of institutional giving at Lions Clubs International Foundation. Absolutely thrilled to be here with all of you today, and let me thank the organizers for the very generous invitation to join all of you here for the Sight First Conclave. I really wish I was there live with all of you in India. India has been very close to me for over the last 20 years. Started my career working at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi, worked at the embassy for a number of years, worked on a number of development projects throughout the country, and most recently with LCIF. And I've had the good fortune to travel throughout the country and to meet with many of you and to see the great work that Lions are implementing on the ground in India. So my congratulations to all of you. Today, the organizers have asked for me to talk about effective collaborations. What does it take to build a strong partnership? They're unique. They take a lot of variables involved, and they take time for it to truly come together. So with that, let's jump right in, give some background on where we will focus our discussion today, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have. So for our agenda today, we're going to first start with a bit of background on global partnerships. We'll talk about current global trends and CSR, corporate social responsibility. We'll discuss a little bit of why partner with LCIF, why to partner with the foundation. We'll provide some spotlights of some great case studies of how partnerships really work. We'll dig into a little bit of how do we evaluate a prospective partner? What truly makes an entity, whether it's a corporation, a foundation, or a government, a true partner to you and to our organization? And then finally, we talk about how do we simplify our message when engaging to a non-Lions audience. It's a different audience. They don't always know the depth of our experience, the depth of our work globally, the depth of our work in India. So how do we convey that message in a very simple way so they understand it quickly? And there's a lot of aha moments of, aha, I had no idea this is the depth that Lions have in my country, or the depth of work they might have in Vision for the conversation we're having here today. So with that, let's jump in a little bit more. Global partnerships. When you look at the common philanthropic cycle to develop a partnership, it can take 9 to 12 months. It can take some time for us to begin to identify an appropriate entity who is strategically aligned with what our mission is, with what our global causes are. We qualify them. Do they think that we are the right entity to be connected with? Do we subscribe to what their mission is, to their objectives? We want to make sure this could be a two-way street. We think about the cultivation. Who's the best person to put that ask in, to begin the conversation, to begin to introduce Lions, our foundation, and our work on the ground? Then, as you can imagine, there's a lot of prep in terms of developing a very solid proposal for an entity to consider, to outline how we might work together. And then once they say, hopefully, yes, we then want to make sure that we maintain strong ties to them. We continue to steward them. We make them understand that we can scale our work. We can build upon our projects. And hopefully, they want to do more work with us. They want to renew the way that we engage. So when we look at how we build a solid foundation for building a partnership, there's a few areas here, and I'm going to touch on these just slightly, and I'm going to dig into them a little bit more later in the presentation. The first one that we'll look at often is, how do we accelerate a conversation? Who is it that we know of that entity that can help drive the conversation faster along? Again, these conversations can take between 9 to 12 months for them to evolve. So by understanding who we know within the leadership helps us accelerate the discussion. We talk about our ability. What is it that we as Lions have to offer to that partner in terms of our technical experience, our geographic footprint, how we're ingrained in a local community? There's a number of factors here, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. The angle. What is it that we have a competitive advantage over anyone else in the industry of why that entity should partner with us? A strong angle is the case that we want to be made. And then finally, as you would imagine, our advantage. What are unique offerings we can offer to them? What are benefits we can offer them for really developing a partnership with the foundation or with Lions? So as we look at it as a foundation, I think there's some good background to talk about how do we approach partnerships? What are things that we do? Well, we look at partnerships that really embrace the mission of the foundation, which is to empower the service of our local Lions. We want to ensure that we're leveraging the local expertise of our Lions. We want to make sure that the cause areas are aligned. They might not always be perfectly over-aligned with an entity of our prospecting, but there are ways that we consider vision as a great area for us to focus our efforts. We look also that we fund the project through LCIF. So traditionally, the funds from that partner will come through the foundation, and then we would channel those directly to the local Lions. And those costs will then help underwrite the direct project cost. What we don't do when we talk about building partnerships is that the support there is not necessarily meant to support the local Lions and their outreach to a corporation. It's meant in developing a partnership amongst the three entities: the local entity, the local Lions, the foundation, and an international corporation, foundation, or a government. We want to ensure that the project costs are really what develops the budget for a foundation of a partnership with a company. We do not accept in-kind donations with companies, with other entities. Sometimes that can become an attractive mechanism. As a foundation, that's not an area that we're able to really engage in any further at this point. But what we do is we prioritize. We prioritize our work to ensure that we don't have the ability to chase every lead, every discussion someone might have. So we really prioritize where we think our efforts need to be focused. What leads that we receive from local Lions, from entities that ensure that a real conversation can come forward. And this takes some time to really develop over time. So some best practices when we think about building partnerships. Thorough research is key. It's paramount here to really understand, are we strategically aligned with this potential company or potential funder? Do our visions match up in terms of the type of work we might do in vision? Do we have the ability to build trust through communications with this partner? Do we have the ability that once we develop a partnership to truly acknowledge them, to thank them, to ensure that they understand the importance that it is that this partnership has for us and for that organization? That we build support from top down and bottom up. Some of the work that we'll talk about today, we as a foundation, it's top to bottom. A conversation starts at the foundation, and then we begin to engage our local lions. However, we're very keen to engage with our local lions as they begin to think through possible partnerships and the role that the foundation can play with them as well. On this slide here, you'll see other really good best practices is accountability. Do we have the mechanisms to track success? Data is one of the most important outputs of our projects that we can provide to a partner. It's what they're asking for. It's what they really need from us. They want to understand the impact, the number of beneficiaries that are involved. That's what's key for them. So we need to think about successful models and systems. They're not always high-tech models, but sometimes low-cost models to ensure that we can track and really monitor and evaluate these projects in a timely manner. And we can provide quick and timely feedback and data back to a partner. It's critical. It demonstrates really our overall strength of project management and demonstrates that we're focused on the output and the impact that these projects have. And finally, at the end, we talk about recognition plans. Partners want to be recognized for their work, for their gifts that they give, whether to the foundation or to local lions. And local lions know how to do this very, very well. So what are different ways that we can thank them? What are different ways that we can recognize them? Things to think about. So thought it might be a good opportunity to talk about current global corporate social responsibility trends. So a few areas that I thought would be helpful is to really look at some trends that we're often watching at the foundation and as we're building partnerships. The first here, as you'll see, is something that is quite extraordinary right now, is you think about, in the world that we live in, is that really truly health, environmental, and social governance programs have created some significant discussion in the open space, whether it's in media, whether it's in other publications. But that discussion is also fueling a discussion where customers and other entities know that it helps drive shareholder value. Their engagement in local communities is actually good for business for them. And it's not just from a customer base, but there's an expectation of their communities, of the roles that they'll play within their respective communities. You'll see that within corporate social responsibility, it's a big space. So you'll see collaborations amongst government, amongst corporations, but also amongst industries. So are there ways that the chemical industry and the pharma industry, the chemical and the farm industry, or agriculture industry can play roles together? It takes a village to really get to make sure this work really comes across. So let's not be limited in the way that we really think about the way that we approach these partnerships. Right now, what you're seeing as well is that, CSR, it's one of the pillars of overall strategy for a company. It's not philanthropy. We've moved away from the days where it's a big check that's written. And because it's a big logo, sometimes the expectation is that company can write a big check. And the answer many times is they can, but what is their return on investment? What is the impact that they are receiving for that gift, for that donation that they're making? And that's something we need to really think about quite critically in the work that we do. Again, right now, currently, is there's a heightened expectation that corporations need to have a voice on social issues, environmental issues, and on issues in their communities here. So this really creates opportunity. All of this is what you see here. It creates opportunity for companies to engage with NGOs. And quite frankly, Lions is a fantastic fit for a number of companies. Companies, what they know how to do well is they know their business line, they know their practice, they know the widget that they build, but they don't always know how to engage best within their communities as well. And that's really where Lions and the foundation can assist. And that's where we become, quite frankly, a very strong partner for them. So on this next slide, many of you might be familiar with Forbes magazine, popular business publication here. So again, let's look at some of the other trends that are kind of surfacing kind of in the discussion right now. A few here, and we'll pull up here next. Again, we see here is for companies to take a stand. They want customers and their clients want them to have a genuine, authentic voice on issues. It's mandated. They can't just say that they kind of support an issue. Their customers and clients want them to have a voice on what it is. And it's truly important for them, now more than ever. Companies are expanding their roles on diversity and inclusion within their companies. They're thinking about sustainability in a real way, not necessarily in a way that it was kind of a terminology that was used for a long time, but what did it really mean within a community? Taking personal responsibility. So the C leadership of companies, the expectation of their shareholders and of their companies is that they take a very strong personal role in the way that they guide their companies. And really thinking about empowering the new generations. So there's been a lot of discussion in terms of the millennial generation and how do we engage them within the space that companies are challenged with. So when we think about corporate social responsibility, there's so many definitions. There's so many words that get attached to it. But it means so many different things to different companies. When you look at corporate responsibility, this is a fantastic chart here to see about all of the different definitions, all the different roles, all the different variables that come into place for corporate responsibility. For Lions, we fill many of these, but this role over here on the left, corporate responsibility, that's primarily where we as Lions and our projects can play a role. It can long term with really supporting the triple bottom line and creating shareholder value. But really here, this is the role where we play in our work and our projects can play when companies support project-based work. This is a great slide. You'll see a number of different indexes that come out every year of the companies across the world that really the most progressive in terms of corporate responsibility. Now, corporate responsibility can mean a few things. It can mean that a company has very strong internal policies on environment, on working with its supplier base, on working with its employees, but that's internal. The other side of the coin is external. How do they engage within the community? What kind of commitments do they give back to their community? Do their employees work in their communities? Do they have programs within their companies so their employees can give back to social causes that are meaningful for them? So when we see rankings like this, as well as on this next page, it might always be best understood what creates that best reputation. And I think the common denominator here is their authentic voice in their community, or their authentic partner in their community. So when we look at it, we look ahead and within the work within my division at LCIF, why are we excited as we look ahead is that the narrative has changed here in the last few years to support these types of collaborations. And that companies really have now begun to see the power that NGOs can play within their communities. They know that they can be dynamic relationships. I'm quite excited when you look at our brand as well. Lions, we are known as trusted entities within communities. not political, not religious, not other. We are simply an entity that is committed to giving service back to its communities. And that has a lot of mileage with potential partners. So when we have conversations with companies and the conversation comes up of, well, why partner with LCIF? Part of it is we have a really great story to tell. Often, believe it or not, when we have a conversation with a company sometimes, the conversation very much can start with, I think I've seen the Lions logo before. I've heard of them before. I have a friend who's a Lion. I had an uncle who was a Lion. I saw work at a school that the Lions might have done, but they might not understand it holistically. And as we tell this story, and we talk about 1.4 million members across the world, they're quite taken back. 200 countries. A foundation's given $1 billion in humanitarian grants over the last 50 years is impressive. So it shows that we have a real commitment as Lions and as the foundation and our respective communities. And that's something quite important. And I think that shows that we have staying power within communities and with corporations. This is really important. 100%. 100% of what partners give to us goes directly back out to projects. And in today's age, this is a small group that really play within the space. A small group that can say that 100% of the donations that come to the foundation go back out to projects. There's no administrative overhead. There's no operating fees attached to this, management fees attached to this. It's something with great pride that we can tell partners that we're able to deliver on, that 100% of their donation will go to these projects. But we have a strong governance structure that supports this, and rules and trustees that oversight and oversee the work that we do. And that's, I think, immensely important that oversight is there, in fact, for partners to know hard on hand that when they do develop a partnership with us, it's going to be something that'll be long lasting and one that they can have built-in trust with as well. So when we look ahead, rankings are great ways to validate the work that we do. Many of you might know Charity Navigator, a well-known ranking in terms of internationally that really is the gold star for NGOs as well to show the way that we interact in this space. And when you get a 4-star rating, and it shows that we're getting that rating because of effective fiscal management and accountability and governance and transparency, it's huge. Again, it builds trust. Although we could have the best technical program in the world, there needs to be trust from that partner in the work that we have and the work that we do at Lions. When we look at a country like India, we have a great story to tell partners, potential partners. First, having the ability to provide tax exemption, us being a Section 8 company, is hugely important for companies. But we can also show our own investment in terms of a foundation in India with over 2,000 projects and over 700,000 crore that we've had, 700 crore in projects, but also having staff on the ground and in Oprah to oversee projects really makes a very strong case for companies. And when you look at the depth of our work through the foundation as well as through Lions, it's huge. How many entities can really begin to generate numbers that we see here in terms of the number of work that we've done with hospitals and in vision and dialysis centers and in infrastructure and in Lions Quest and in education? There's not many. So we're diverse in that nature. It means we have the ability to be a lot of things to a lot of different people, but that it makes us a very attractive entity because, again, of our history that we have in India stands for itself. So when we talk with partners, we often talk about the ways that we can scale projects. Again, one of our biggest assets are our Lions. So we can say, well, we can work with you at a local level within a community. And for example, our local club has been established in this community since X date. For a partner, that's attractive. For us to then say, well, if it's not at a local level, we can think about within a regional level across perhaps West Bengal that we might be able to work with you. Or we can raise it one other level. We can say, well, we can work with you across the country. In a country like India, where we have close to 300,000 Indians that are lions, that's a strong case. You'd probably be hard to not find a part of India where we don't have lions, meaning that we have the ability to develop partnerships practically anywhere in the country of India. So again, for a partner, that's extremely attractive. Well, sometimes it's not just India. We can say, well, when you look at the big picture of us and the work that we do, 200 countries, 1.4 million members, we have the ability to work in a number of different countries with you. So all these variables make a very strong case for a partner and to build an effective collaboration. And no doubt in these discussions with companies and with other entities that this makes a very, very strong pitch on why we're an effective partner. So when we look at some of our partnerships, let's shine a light on some of those that have really been fantastic, that have really had some strong impact. Well, one, and it's very applicable for our work here today that we're talking about, is our Sight for Kids program with Johnson & Johnson Vision. This is a program that's almost 20 years to date, has had an impact of over 30 million children that we've been able to impact. In West Bengal alone, there's been over 1.6 million children that have been screened. This is the type of program that's had an enormous scale. And right now, I'm very pleased to be working closely with the leadership in 322 for expanding this program here and really beginning to identify the role of community health workers in our type of work here that we do in vision screening and finding effective models for us to consider that long term. And when you talk about a great partnership and where they begin to scale, as your partner comes to you and says, well, are there other areas that we might be able to work? Are there divisions within our company you might be interested in working with? And of course, the answer always is yes, yes, yes. We would love to engage with different entities within your company. Johnson & Johnson has been a great example of that. We talked about earlier about the community health worker program. We're now exploring avenues on their surgical side. We are thinking about ways that we can do cause marketing campaigns with them. Cause marketing campaigns would be one like in India, where maybe a group of ophthalmologists would work with Johnson & Johnson. There would be a campaign to say, for every pair of contact lenses sold, X amount of rupees would go to the Sight for Kids program, which will support the Lions' great work they do in these communities. Fantastic program, great visibility, great recognition of the Lions' work on the ground. So it really illuminates the type of program. And quite honestly, is a very easy way in terms of raising some dollars to support the ongoing program at the same time. Johnson & Johnson was also approached to say, well, are there ways that we can develop mechanisms for our employees to give to the foundation to support the Sight for Kids program? And of course, the answer to that is absolutely yes. So why does Johnson & Johnson want to engage their employees? They want to show their employees that they want them to understand why they're supporting the Sight for Kids program. They want them to understand its impact that it has. They want them to understand that, quite frankly, this work has been transformative. It's one of the largest school-based screening programs that exist today, and that they want their employees to feel connected to them. Because if they feel connected to it, then they become more entrepreneurial and within their own company. It helps drive, connects them more to their company at the same time. Another partnership that we've developed who's been fantastic over the last year, particularly, has been with Latter-day Saint Charities. Latter-day Saint Charities, one of their strategically aligned areas with ours is within vision. And so the rapport that we've dealt with them is one where they have interest on specific countries based off of the work plan for each year to support ongoing or upcoming Sight First projects, to support equipment, to support vehicles, to support training needs. That's where their interest is. So we're very commonly linked in these type of development. And it's one that for Latter-day Saints, their interest comes that when we present projects to them, they've been developed by the local Lions. They've been reviewed by headquarters staff. They've been reviewed by the technical advisor. So when we present the project for them, essentially it's been vetted. There's a high level of interest then to become engaged. So you'll see here on the slide, we have a great track record with them to date, and we continue to expand this list for their projects they will continue to support long term. And as that relationship continues to grow, in India alone, we're looking at opportunities potentially in water and sanitation in southern India, other opportunities for us to engage in more school screening projects, potentially in West Bengal as well. And coming up, we've already presented them the next round of projects for potential consideration. So this is a great mechanism in terms of how you develop a strong rapport. You really find where you're strategically aligned by cause area, and you show good faith. You show good faith that we might not be able to link in every country where they might have interest, but the ones that we will work together on, there's a very strong partnership that can exist. So on the next slide here, the World Diabetes Foundation, as many of you might know. We've been working closely with them on a project in the Republic of Georgia. And the discussion started where World Diabetes Foundation was familiar with the Lions. About 3 years ago, actually, Pepe Naresh had signed kind of a global MOU with WDF as the foundation began to have diabetes as one of our cause areas. And about 1.5 years ago, they approached us to say, well, is there a chance we can maybe both fund a project? Could we co-fund a project? Because of the scale of the project is one that had great magnitude. And the project that they were proposing was one that was being currently implemented at a local level by the Lions in the Republic of Georgia. And the proposal from the local Lions was to develop a nationwide program on really introducing the topic of diabetic retinopathy, and one that would be working closely with government at the highest levels, at the national CDC, with the Ministry of Health, and really bringing that all together. So it's sometimes difficult when you bring two organizations together, and there are different processes together to fund a project. But we were successful in doing this. So to date, WDF and LCIF both co-fund a project in Georgia that's nationwide. It's operating in 6 different parts of the country. We're each providing around $215,000 in terms of support for this project. And what you've seen here in a very short turnaround time, going back to last summer, has been a series of technical trainings that have happened with family doctors, with ophthalmologists, with cardiologists in the country, of really beginning to introduce this topic, the diabetic retinopathy, providing appropriate equipment. There have been a number of discussions with the national CDC in terms of developing a diabetes registry for the country as well. And these trainings that the Lions have been developing and implementing have been held in close collaboration with the Ministry of Health as well. So a fantastic way of how a partnership kind of comes together, but really needing to dig very deep in terms of understanding, let's not let processes and bureaucracy kind of get in the way of the great work that can happen here. So our local Lions have taken this project and moved it forward in such an extraordinary way. And the close collaboration they've developed with the government is allowing for this project to single-handedly move forward at a pace that's unheard of. So when we look at one of our projects here, and one of our legacy and vision, Sight for Kids has been a fantastic project that we've been implementing. And it's one that really has meant to really elevate the way that we conduct school-based screening programs, and one that's working very closely with ministries of health and education. It's one that's meant to overscreen the student population. It's one that's meant to find a way that we have a cohesive structure in terms of how we really move this from a screening program to comprehensive eye health care. One that we ensure that we develop systems that have strong referral systems to our alliance hospitals or to other referral hospitals, and strong follow-up as well, that those children have followed up on the referrals and are wearing glasses at the same time. Currently, when you look at the program here, we are operating in a number of different countries. India is one that's been extremely successful. West Bengal has been a site for Sight for Kids for a number of years with tremendous impact. You see Thailand, Philippines, Kenya. There's a small pilot project in Germany. And the yellow sites here are where we have had programs in the past and potentially to expand those areas moving forward. But again, it's tremendous impact of this program. On average, 3 million children a year that we're addressing. But what's interesting when you look at the program is that Sight for Kids has a wonderful opportunity to really leverage our ongoing vision programs or Sight First work of the foundation here. So we don't want it to be one-off in nature. So when we approach a partner, we have the ability to say that, well, the Sight for Kids program for J&J in this case, we can say, well, look at the ways of how we really ensure this is sustainable long-term, given the local Alliance leadership on the ground, the healthcare professionals and technical advisors that we're tapping to support the program, our local Lions hospitals or other local eye hospitals that support this work, and often sometimes in-kind supplies and materials. So it's really a win-win that helps kind of drive this program forward. Again, we talk about the impact. 2.5 to 3 million children a year is an extraordinary number. And I think over time, you will continue to see this number continue to grow. Yes, there are areas now that we will need to reconsider of how this work gets conducted. And we'll need to think about, given COVID-19, are there challenges we need to rethink in terms of how we really address these partnerships at a local level? And how do we do those screenings in the most effective way that are safe for the children, for our Lions, and for other local entities at the same time? So this is a great section I want to talk about just very quickly here, is about evaluating a prospective partner, right? We talked about it in the very beginning here in terms of some of these characteristics I think that are quite important, because not every partner might be a fit for us when we think about an effective collaboration. So you remember this chart here I showed here at the very beginning in terms of focusing on how do we build that, kind of the 4 steps, place, accelerating, the angle, the ability, and the advantage. Well, let's dig into those a little bit more. We talked about acceleration. So this is a simple one. Where do we have a great contact with that partner to start the conversation? Because if we start that conversation as close to the top of the organization, it will move this conversation forward faster. Also, something to consider here is who is making that ask? Who's the appropriate person to move forward that discussion? That matters in such a big way here in terms of how this conversation really gets elevated. The best case scenario, we want someone who's C-leadership of a company, right? Someone who's a real decision maker. Someone ultimately, even after that first meeting when we approach them, they can say, this sounds good. Let's put our team on it to work together to figure out how we might move this forward. That's a very reasonable kind of output of a very first high-level meeting. Again, patience and perseverance. These things can take time in terms of how we build these. The angle, right? So let's figure out, how do we best approach this company? What's the issue that we want to approach with them? In this case, and for today, for this conclave, it's vision. So what's our pitch? Is it that we want to do school-based screening program? Is it that we want to talk about work within a local hospital that's going to support the larger community? Do we want to position a program that begins to fill, part of the development gap within a community? Is it that transportation is something that's needed to really fuel better vision screenings? What's the angle that we really propose to them? What's something that's unique? But we also need to make sure it's something that is aligned with their interest. We also need to take a real hard look at this and say, does that partner have the capacity to give financially? And how much do they traditionally give? If they have an internal foundation, at what levels do they give? And does that become a little bit bureaucratic in terms of our engagement, as it's a very sequential discussion in terms of there's a proposal, there's a review date. Those are fine for the right organizations, but we also want to figure out ways that we elevate our discussion, right? So at the foundation, when we think about partnerships at a financial level, we're really thinking about partnerships that are $150,000 US dollars and above. Below that, there's a real question. Is it worth the staff time? Is it worth the local Lions staff time? Possibly. Not all things considered the same here. So we have to really evaluate all of these financial elements here to see, is it something that is truly something that benefits all of the organizations? The advantage. I mean, quite clearly, we have such a great story to talk about from the foundation and local Lions in terms of what do we have to offer a company. Tax exemption sometimes can be the first conversation a company wants to understand. We talk about them really taking their branding and how do we elevate it by connecting it to the foundation and alliance. And that can become quite popular. Because what we also want to do is we want to globally recognize them for the support and for the partnership that we have around the world. It can elevate the project. It can bring gravitas to the project. So let's find out ways that we can really use social media and other public avenues to really broadcast the success of what a partnership can be and should be. So this is a great section here that I like to talk about simplifying our message. So when you approach a company, at this point, they've heard a lot of different things about Lions. But when simply put, it's you do a lot of projects, but I've heard so many things that what is it exactly that Lions do and what do you do well? Well, in the case of Vision, it's quite easy because it's been one of our legacies as Lions. But when we talk about all of our other work, it can become confusing. For someone who comes from a non-Lions world, how do we tell that story in a simple way? Well, something that we've developed here is to kind of break it down to say, well, Lions build, whether it's an infrastructure, whether it's an aftermath of disasters, whether it's with hospitals. We teach our Lions Quest work and other work that Lions do. The impact that they have within their communities and education is enormous, in India particularly as well. We talk about how we partner. We partner with leading international organizations, consortiums, companies, associations, governments, and hospitals. We also talk about how we help heal and the great work that our Lions do on the ground as well. And these are impact numbers. These are ways that we quickly tell our story. So they see the magnitude of it and they say, I get it. I understand it. We simplified to say, well, there's Site First, but let's just talk about our vision program. So sometimes it's change our own vernacular. MD322 probably isn't going to mean something always to a company, but Eastern India does, and that's okay. So let's ensure that we speak the language of who that partner is at the same time. You know, as an organization for our Lions, it's important that we have available resources. And as a foundation, the work that we do with Lions when we're thinking about partnerships is we very much focus on a lot of the vetting, the due diligence, the proposal preparing. That's the work that we do. After we know that it's, if you remember from the earlier slides, a lead that's qualified. And then there's a lot of tailoring of the approach of how we approach an entity. The angle, the geography, the leadership, the topic. These are all really, really important. They take quite some time to develop and to really have fine-tune. But that tailored approach is so important. We want to speak the language of that entity that we're approaching. We talk about the talking points. What's the discussion we're going to have with them? How do we, if myself and someone else and you are in a room having a conversation, who's kind of leading the discussion here? What are the fine points that we really want to come away with? And not every discussion is going to result in one meeting. It might take some time. But in a first meeting, we want them to walk away with I understand. And there's interest to engage. And if they might not know what it is, that's okay. But we really need to make sure that we focus in on that. We talk about our storytelling. Storytelling is really the impact of the work that all of you have done. And we find ways of how we storytell that through video, through blog posts, through photos. Those are the ways that we kind of develop this tailored partnership pitch to a company so they can see it for themselves. So it's not just words, but it's really the visual of what drives our work. So we've developed quite a few of those materials, and for India specifically. We also think about out-of-box recognition strategies. So what is it that is going to be important for that company of how we recognize them? Some people might say that it's a plaque, perhaps. Sometimes it might be a lion going to their board meeting to talk about the impact of a project. Or it can be inviting that company to the project so they can see the impact of the work. A number of different ways to cut this, but I think that's where we listen very carefully when we're engaging companies to see what's really truly important for them. And I think at the end, one of the things that we do often is we think about is what is the event of how we're cultivating that corporation, that entity, to really get it to the very end. So if we've been having these conversations from 9 to 12 months, what is it that ultimately does it take for us to achieve success? They're coming there to say, yes, we want to work with you. This is a fantastic program. We want to commit the dollars to you. We'd like to move forward. It takes a lot of coordination in terms of developing that. So with that, I really want to thank all of you for your time today. I hope this was helpful as we talk about mechanisms to develop effective collaborations and partnerships. We've had a good run at LCIF. We've had some fantastic partnerships we've developed. We've developed with many of you. We've developed many in India, and we're only looking to grow them long term. After this, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have and provide this presentation or anything else at a later date. Thank you so much.